The TV show Cops paints a one-sided picture of police work. It's the thin blue line between order and chaos. But when that perspective changes from the police's point of view to that of citizens during, say, a police encounter, sometimes the video footage tells a different story, one of police intimidation and even brutality. Candice Bernd, who's Truthout's assistant editor and also a reporter for Truthout, is here to talk about a piece she wrote entitled Police Departments Retaliate Against Organized Cop Watch Groups Across the U.S. Hi Candice, welcome back to Truthout.
Hey Ted, I always enjoy our talks. Thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. I always enjoy them as well. Your piece highlights a couple of groups, Cop Block and Cop Watch. These were groups that were started to monitor police activity and document incidents where the police seem to overstep their authority during routine stops and sometimes not so routine stops. Are these groups fairly new or they've been around for a while?
Well, they've been around for a while. And you know, with these groups, I think that I wanted to focus on the article, not necessarily for the namesake of either Cop Block or Cop Watch. Really what I wanted to focus on in the article was decentralized or small local groups who are going out and in a proactive fashion monitoring police activity. So whether or not they're under any certain banner, what I wanted to focus on and the distinction I wanted to make in this article was the difference between proactive filming and reactive filming, or basically the difference between, you know, a lot of people, when they happen to be around police activity or they see something happening, they will pull out their phone, which is great and justified. And I think that there's been a lot of reporting on how police have retaliated against people filming. But with this article, I wanted to focus on the kinds of groups and organizations who are going out in a planned fashion, in an organized fashion, listening to police scanners and, you know, going to checkpoints they know about, and kind of in an organized way, monitoring police activity. And these groups, you know, Peaceful Streets, Cop Watch, Cop Block, they believe vastly different things. People do this for all different reasons. You know, there are some libertarian folks that are associated, you know, who are going out and doing this, as well as some people on the left. The point is that the groups I'm looking at are decentralized and they're operating in their communities. And, you know, they believe many different things, but they all have the thing in common that they want to act as a kind of an accountability or a check on their local police departments.
Yeah, like you said, it's across the political spectrum, if you will. It goes from right-leaning libertarians to people who just want to make sure that, well, people probably on the left side as well, but also just people maybe straight down the middle saying that we need to keep the cops accountable. Now, one of the things that's going on, and you highlight this in your article, is the connection that the Austin Police Department is making between one of the groups, and you basically highlighted them earlier, Peaceful Streets Project, and they're organized in Austin, Texas, and the police department is trying to link them with domestic extremism. This has some sort of legal bearing, does it not?
Right. So what I write about in the article, and I think one of the reasons why it got the response that it did, is because basically the group Peaceful Streets got some internal emails from the Austin Police Department in which an Austin police officer really kind of makes this strange portrait. He kind of paints a very strange portrait where he talks about, you know, he names a couple of groups by name, Cop Block, Cop Watch, and Peaceful Streets are all among them. And he lumps them together with what are known as sovereign citizens organizations. So sovereign citizens are really well known in Texas and across the South. They're right-leaning, and they basically believe that most governmental institutions are illegitimate. They're kind of akin to, like, if you've ever heard of the organization Oath Keepers, where their argument is that, you know, somewhere along the line, the Constitution and other key governmental documents became void because they weren't upheld or they were violated. A lot of times they believe that the only legitimate law enforcement official is the local sheriff and that anything else is kind of illegitimate. And they do things like they will forge license plates, forge identification documents because they don't believe that the institutionalized forms of documents are legitimate. But the point is that the FBI classifies sovereign citizens groups as domestic terrorism. And that's like an official designation. So them trying to put these groups together, Cop Watch, Cop Block, Peaceful Streets, with the sovereign citizens groups is basically an attempt to label Cop Watch and other police accountability organizations as a threat to domestic law enforcement and as domestic extremists or domestic terrorism. Antonio Buehler, I talked to him in the article, he's the one who really started the Peaceful Streets movement after basically he caught an incident of police brutality and was retaliated against. They tried to peg him for a false felony case of spitting in an officer's face, which he never did. And there's multiple video that shows that he was never indicted. But basically, he told me that the APD is talking to a fusion center, trying to make this connection between his group, Peaceful Streets, and domestic terrorism. If his group does become officially labeled as that, they can crack down on them really hard. The members of that group, several have been arrested, about 4 or 5 have been arrested doing the kind of proactive filming that I talk about in the article. They really, really fear that the APD will do violence to them. They think that these emails kind of show that the APD are leaving a paper trail that shows that they have a case or that they will be justified if they arrest them and use force against them. That they can point back to their kind of internal record and say, well, these guys are a threat for this reason. But basically, the group contends that they've only ever engaged in First Amendment activity. They're nonviolent when they go out there and film the cops. And I think Buehler is a really, really stunning example of the kinds of retaliation that these groups are facing just for attempting to even, question the authority of local police departments and kind of shine a light on them.
The case in Austin is just one of many that you highlight in your article.
Right, it's not the first time that's happened.
It just seems like there's just various levels of us versus them with regards to the police. You've got a militarization of the police that's going on that we see not only in, say, Ferguson, Missouri, but also all across small cities and small towns in the United States where people are buying these military vehicles to put down what they see as threats, that suddenly the mission changes for the police from protect to serve to shoot first, it seems like. And even John Oliver on his show Last Week Tonight had highlighted something called civil forfeiture laws, and where the police will take cash on a routine speeding stop, if you will. Some guy got $20,000 taken from him because his father had loaned him the money to start a new life in California, and he was driving through Nevada or something like that, and they took his money. And they just basically said that we've determined that this is going to be used to buy drugs. And it was just like, what? I just told you my story about how I'm moving to California. So you have a change in police, their objectives, their mission, their serve to protect. And as I said, it's to put a kind of a pithy headline on it, it's more like to shoot and shake down. But that's not necessarily the case in all police forces across the country. And in fact, one of the things that we were talking prior to recording this was something that your article that you wrote for Truthout is being used by the police in a very constructive way.
Yeah, so I think the militarization trend is one that both has shaken the country and caused alarm, but also the one that is, police departments are becoming aware of. They are understanding the public's fear about it. And one great thing that happened with my article was that basically a California Department of Justice, it's called POST, or Peace Officer Standards and Training. It's going to be used in an ethics class, which is basically part of a training program for law enforcement executives in the California Department of Justice. So an instructor reached out, is going to be using this article to train police chiefs, sheriffs, and command staff on ethics. So hopefully this article will be generating conversations and making police executives think about First Amendment rights and the fact that they're going to be encountering cop watchers, increasingly. And you talk about the militarization trend. I think that that's why this article and cop watching is so important, because cop watching, and especially proactive cop watching, is going to become more important to communities as this trend continues, and I think it is a trend that will continue. There's plenty of police chiefs who have said that they basically see civilians and they see, municipalities and the local places where they're at as, quote, war zones. I mean, that's on the record. Police have said that, that's come out of their mouths, and that's a perspective that's gaining ground in local police departments. They feel like they really need the Humvees and this military gear because they are in a war zone and they are viewing civilians as enemy combatants. And as much as they view civilians as a threat, I think civilians are increasingly viewing their local police departments as a threat. And this is the way that they're responding. They're doing it non-violently. Their only weapon per se is a camera. They're shooting with cameras instead of with guns. And I think that was really why I wanted to write this article, was because cop watching, I think, is going to become increasingly important in communities, especially urban, low-income communities where a lot of this is happening, in communities where there are more people of color, like Ferguson, who disproportionately experience this kind of police brutality. Cop watching is going to become really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. Candice, I want to thank you for being on Truthout Interviews.
Thanks so much, Ted. I appreciate it.
And you can read Candice's piece on Truthout, and it's entitled Police Departments Retaliate Against Organized Cop Watch Groups Across the U.S. And thanks for watching Truthout Interviews. I'm Ted Asregadoo, and we'll see you next time.